Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Conscious Living Spiritist Center in this nice Sunday morning to all of us. I see Susanna there. Hi, Susanna. If you can do me a favor and let me know if you can hear me well and see me well, just to do a check on technology. Good morning, Juan. Welcome. We are blessed to be together again today to learn a bit more about Spiritism through our lectures. And we do hope that all of you are well and healthy and your families as well. Thank you, Susanna, for confirming. Well, today, as usual, we will start with our initial reading just to bring our hearts together. We will read a lesson from the book Living Spring from Francisco Cândido Xavier, or Chico Xavier, in the Spirit Manual. We will go for our initial prayer, and then we have a very dear guest of ours, our friend José Mussi, the president of the Toronto Spiritist Society. It's great joy that we received Joe here today. So, without further ado, and welcome to those who are joining, we will go for our reading. The lesson is the lesson 89 from the book Living Spring. And the title of the lesson is On Our Journey. And it is actually a question asked by Jesus, and that was registered by Mark in chapter 10, verse 51. Jesus asked him, "What would you like me to do for you?" Imagine if Jesus asked us that question. Each student has a lesson to learn. Each worker has been entrusted with a task. Each vase has its usefulness. Each struggler has an ordeal to endure. Thus, each of us has our own individual testimony on the road of life. We often fail at our commitments and thus greatly increase our debts. Yet, in our redemptive endeavor, we beg the Lord for his mercy, compassion, and help. The question the Master asks of the blind man from Jericho is highly meaningful, however. What would you like me to do for you? This question shows us that the beggar's delicate position was in line with the imperatives of the law. Nothing happens in the absentia of the divine principles. Blind Bartimaeus knew how to respond and asked to be able to see. Nevertheless, how many people pray for access to the Savior's presence, but when asked by him, they answer it in their own detriment. Let us remember that sometimes we may have to lose our earthly home in order to learn the way to our heavenly home. On many occasions, we are abandoned by those we love the most, so that we may return to the divine bonds. And there are times when the wounds of the body are called on to heal those of the spirit. And there are situations in which paralysis teaches us how precious being able to move is. It is natural for us to ask for the Master's help in our afflictions and difficulties. Meanwhile, let us not forget to work for the good on the most painful passages of rectification and ascension, convinced that we invariably find ourselves in the most just, beneficial, and deserved opportunity of work, and that maybe, for the time being, we do not know how to choose anything better. It's a great reflection. And with that, dear friends, I would like to invite us all for our initial prayer. You can close your eyes if you choose to do so. And let us calm our minds and our hearts, elevating your thoughts to our beloved Master Jesus, to God, our Creator, in gratitude for this day, in gratitude for the blessing of life. Thank you, Father, for allowing us to be in the present moment in this beautiful planet, this school of our souls, helping us to improve ourselves and to be better through the lessons that we have endured so far and that are ahead of us. Dear Master Jesus, thank you for your lessons, for your example in sacrifice made for love to all of us. Please, Master, may our minds and our hearts be open to once and for all let your lessons, your example, enter and fill our souls with hope, with strength, with perseverance. May we endure the pain and the challenges of extracting the selfishness and the vices that we carry for millennia. And may we give room for the sun of your examples to let the divine in us germinate little by little every day. We are grateful for our guardian angels who inspired us to be here in these few moments, and we ask you, please, inspire our dear brother José Mussi, who prepared with so much care and love the reflections that he's going to share with us this morning. And may we all be tuned to absorb those lessons. And with that, we ask your permission to start our humble gathering this morning. Thank you, and so be it. Well, welcome to those who are joining us right now. And with that, I would like to introduce you to our friend, Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Marcos. How you doing?
Very good. It's great to have you here. It's great to see you again after a while.
It's been I'm too long.
Yes, indeed. So the floor is yours, my friend. I wish you a good lecture.
I presume the virtual floor is mine. These are the virtual
The
days.
virtual floor, yes.
And let me start by saying that I'm always very happy and honored when I get an invitation from the Conscious Living Spiritist group to come and share some of my thoughts, some of the work that we do here up in Canada. And please, to me, the Conscious Living Spiritist group is like my second spiritual home. So very glad to be here this morning. Good morning to everyone who's listening to us live. I hope everyone is well and safe under these difficult times. As I said, we do quite extensive work around the gospel studies here at the TSS. And obviously, a good part of that studies is leveraging Jesus' parables. The parables are so rich in symbolism, so rich in lessons, that it's always a fun and interesting place to start as we try to go deeper and deeper into the meaning of the various messages that the Bible gives to us. So as I had planned with Marcos, I was going to do the parable of the talents. And I was preparing this lecture. I thought that, I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm actually going to bring two what apparently are different parables in the Bible, and then try to bring them together in terms of what is the underlying real message that Jesus is bringing to us, not only on these two, but many others. And I chose the parable of the talents along with the workers of the vineyard. What they have in common, as you will see, is the concept of money, right? So why does Jesus use something so material? I guess it's as material it gets when we talk about materialism as the kind of the theme with which he writes or he talks about his parables. So why don't we start first with the parables of the talents, and then please, if you have any questions, I have created slides here. They're basically just the words directly from the Bible. So if people might think that I may be speaking too fast, or if you don't understand, at least you can follow what I'm saying with the words on the screen. But if you do have any questions, we have access to the chats here, and we can certainly do some breaks along the way to answer the questions. So I'll do a very quick break between the two parables just to see if everybody's following along. Okay? Hope you enjoy this. So let's start with the parable of the talents. And for the purpose of this presentation and these slides, we always know that different translations of the Bibles have different words and different styles. So I've taken the New Jerusalem Bible. So if people have, this is a very good translation of the Bible, whether it's in English or in Portuguese, and I use it often. And this is what you will see here today in the text. So the parable of the talents comes from the book of Matthew, right? The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, 14 to 30. So let's start, and let's remember, I'm sure most of you have heard this story many times, maybe even as a child, as you were going through your Bible studies and preparations for your First Communion, if you're Catholic, or in many of the Spiritist lectures that we do, because they often does come back quite many times. So it starts with a man about to go abroad, summoned his servants, and entrusted his property to them. So he is going to be away. So he gets his three deputies, if you may, and he gives them orders to take care of his property. And we'll come back to these words here later on in more specific terms. But so he needs to go away. He needs somebody to take care of his financial interest. So he did the first one. He gave 5 talents. Talents was the monies at the time, so it's equivalent. So you see the bags there. To another, to the second one, just 2 talents. And to the third one, he only gave 1. So you see that he's giving each one different amounts. And the Bible says each in proportion to his ability. Then he goes away. So here the man is aware that not all of them, of the 3, they have different skills and different capabilities. So he just gives them properly 5, 2, and 1 talents and goes away. And the first one, the guy who got 5 talents, promptly went and traded with them and made 5 more. You see the picture there. He's doing commerce. He's multiplied. He's doubled the amount of money that was given to him. The man who received 2 made 2 more in the same way. So he doubled as well what was given to him or was loaned to him for that period. Remember, they're caretakers of these coins. They belong to the man who gave them, and we're not quite sure why they're doing this, but they're the people he trusts. But the third guy, the one who had received 1, went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Okay, different approach. So he felt safe. He didn't want to lose it. He didn't want to be robbed. He didn't want to make sure that he was keeping it safe. So his understanding of his mission was to protect the money rather than grow the money. Of course, each one with their own interpretation. They worked with the man. They probably knew what the man wanted. But as you see, the first 2 had a different understanding. They understood that they were not only to keep safe that money, but also to keep growing the wealth that was given to them. So when the man comes back, right, And the man goes to his three deputies, the three men that he had entrusted, and he wants to see what happened. We don't know how long it took, or if he was away for many months or many years, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that at a certain date, the man comes back as promised from his trip, and the man who had received the 5 talents came forward bringing 5 more. Sir, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. Here are 5 more that I have made. His master, the boss, the man, said, well done, good and trustworthy servant. You have shown you are trustworthy in small things. I will trust you with greater. Come and join in your master's happiness. Interesting. So now we're starting to see that this whole exercise was a test, right? And the test was that this was a simple thing. So the master had bigger plans, what he could do with these 3 servants. And he used this trip as an excuse to test them. And remember that the first one was the one that was given the most money. So we have to assume he was already the one that's most capable, at least in the eyes of the master. So continue now, verse to 22. Next, the man with the 2 talents came forward. And third, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. Here are 2 more that I have made. Okay, so master was obviously also happy. He said to him, well done, good and trustworthy servant. You have shown you are trustworthy in small things. I will trust you with greater. Come and join in your master's happiness. So it was exactly the same message he gave to the first, even though the second only produced, 40% of what the first one. The first one created 5 more talents. This one only, with the 2 that were given, he only created 2 more. But the master didn't seem to take that as a difference. In fact, he treated them exactly the same. Remember that in the beginning, he said that he gave enough coins based on what he understood to be their capability, their skills. So he was very happy that each one of the first 2 had doubled what he had given him. That's a good story so far. Last came forward the man who had the single talent. Sir, he said, I heard you are a hard man, reaping where you had not sown, and gathering where you had not scattered. So I was afraid, and I went off and hid your talent in the ground. Here it is. It was yours. You have it back. So his understanding was that his only mission was to protect that talent and not do anything with it. But his master was obviously angry at him, and he answered, you wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered? Well, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have gotten my money back with interest. So now take the talent from him and give it to the man who has 10 talents. So here is taking that one that was poorly used and gave it to the first one that seemed to have been the most productive. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have more than enough. But anyone who has not will be deprived even what he has. As for this good-for-nothing servant, throw him in the darkness outside where there will be weeping and grinding of teeth. Okay, so we know that Jesus often used parables to represent God and us. So often the man, the master, he represents God, and we are the servants of God. So here, God has expectations for us. And the concept of these talents can be interpreted many different ways. I've seen very different approaches of how people like to explain or expand on this parable. In some cases, people assume that the things, because it was coins or talents, these are the material properties or material things, such as our body, such as the world, such as the money we make. and that these are the tools that are given to us. These are the talents that are given to us, and we have to use them in the master's own mission, right? And the mission is to propagate that, to make good use of what's given to us and be able to share and be able to grow. So this is very much aligned with the law of progress. For this lecture, my take on it, it's more on the spiritual side. So what God gives us and what Jesus has brought to us through the New Testament is actually God's laws, what he expects of us, how he wants us to behave, the 10 Commandments and all of the lessons that Jesus has given us. So these are the talents that we received from God. And we can take them and we can spread them, we can grow them, we can give it to others who have not heard the message yet, give them the good news, and make them also share with us in that wealth, the wealth being the good that God gives us. If we just take them and keep it to ourselves and hide it and not do anything with it, yes, it might seem okay, because if we're looking at a very selfish approach to this, yeah, I have it. I'm not losing it. I'm not losing that faith that was given to me, but I'm also not multiplying it. And we need to make sure that we have our role in taking what we have learned and what has been given to us. The real gift is not material. The real gift is moral, spiritual, and religious that has been given to us, and that we make it grow. And this is what God wants of us. And if we're not doing this work, then we're going to be suffering for it. Obviously, the message is a bit dark at the end in terms of weeping and grinding of teeth. But this is the realization as we discarnate and we go back to the spiritual world and we do our own reconciliation of what we intended to do in this life and what we accomplished. We will be weeping and grinding our teeth for the things we have not realized, right? What we promised to do, what we had committed to do, and we were not able to deliver. So this is the first part of this message as well, right? That God will give to those who have, and they will have more. And to anyone who has not, they will be taken. So this is always number 29 is always conflicting. Why would God give to those who have and take it away from those who don't have? It isn't kind of charity giving to those who don't have more so they could have as much as everybody else? Why is Jesus telling us that the more you have, the more you're going to get, and the less you have, the more we're going to take away from you? Well, this is not, again, it's not the material, it's not the real coins, it's not money, it's not properties that he's going to take away. What he's talking about is the reward for us multiplying more and more his lessons. So I'll do a quick pause now and see if there's any questions. Marcos, you're welcome to join in and help me here at this point.
I'm back. Yeah, we have no questions on the chat, Joe, but that was really my point here, was reading through this, right? Those who have not as much, even the little that they have will be removed, or they will lose what they have, right? And I was thinking about the period where we are living right now, during the planetary transition. And is that an allusion to, the resources that we have available right now for our growth in this planet? And could that, the little that we have, which is all the resources and the examples and teachings and the facilities of this life, if we really don't make good use of them, would that be an allusion to the fact that we could lose them by not returning to this beautiful planet and going to a planet where we don't even have what we have today. Could that be an analogy or
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's a good point. Obviously, and I'll come back to this after I read the next parable that will bring it together, is that it's a different accounting system between the physical and the spiritual. And for us, even today, we might not fully understand how that accounting system works, right? Here is the kind of, it's almost like a banker's view. The more money you have, the more money you can make. And if you don't have enough money, you end up losing it, right? Which seems odd that Jesus was using such a comparison within his own kind of teachings that he was given to us. But if we kind of move away from the concept of money, it starts to make more sense. At least it starts to make a little bit more sense as we learn. And that's why it's so often then to take this particular parable and often with others and try to combine them in a whole set of context that's going to help us a little bit more understand what's happening. So why don't we move on to the next one, and then we'll have more time for questions. So this is another one of my favorite parables, the workers of the vineyard, because again, as you will see, when you first read it, it does not make any sense. Absolutely no sense. Just like the talents doesn't make sense. Just like other parables. The first time you hear it, he says, well, did Jesus get this right? Was there some kind of a error in the translation? But as we pause and we go a little bit deeper, they start to make a lot more sense. So why don't we go at it? So I'm sorry, this is Matthew chapter 20, 1 to 16. Now, here's again Jesus talking, and he says, now the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner going out at daybreak to hire workers for his vineyard. And at the time, it was understood that these were day workers, right? Comparing to the actual things that happen. So often you would have your own regular workers that are kind of employees, and then you would, especially during the harvest season, you would bring in more people to accelerate, especially if it was going to get cold, if it was going to rain or something. They needed to bring extra workers on to for that particular day. And the daybreak, we assume that it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. So the landowner goes to a place where these day workers sit around, and he looked at some workers, got them to the vineyard, right? And he made an agreement with the workers for 1 denarius a day and sent them to his vineyard. So denarius is like $1 a day or whatever it would have been the equivalent at the time, a fixed amount for the whole day. So it's a daily salary for them, not per hour, but daily. But then he went back at the 3rd hour. So this is already 9 o'clock in the morning. And then went back to the marketplace and saw others standing idle in the marketplace and said to them, you go to my vineyard too, and I will give you a fair wage. That's great. Notice that at this point, he doesn't say what a fair wage is, right? He just says that whereas the first group was promised 1 denarius, here you'll get a fair wage. And these workers, they trust the master because they will go and do the work without knowing how much are they going to get paid. So they went at about the 6th hour. So now we're midday, 12 noon. And again, about the 9th hour. So that's 3 p.m. He went out and did the same. So tells the folks, do you want to work? Go back to my vineyard and I'll give you a fair wage. Then about the 11th hour. Wow, 11th hour. So if this was started at 6 a.m., so now we're at 5 p.m. We'll assume that a day is a 12-hour day, so can't be complaining these days to be working 8 hours, but back then it was 12 hours. And at 11th hour, he went out and found more men standing around and said to them, why have you been standing here idle all day? And they said, well, because no one has hired us. So the master says, okay, you go into my vineyard, you too. So he has 4 groups of workers hired through 4 different hours. some as early as 6 in the morning, others as late as 5 p.m. And for the first, he promised 1 denarius for the whole day, and for the others, he promised a fair wage. So they will trust the master to reward them. In the evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his bailiff, "Call the works and pay them their wages, starting with the last arrivals and ending with the first." So the first group that was hired at the 11th hour came and they received 1 denarius, right? And when the first group came, the one that was hired at 6 o'clock, they expected to get more, but they too just received that 1 denarius. So again, why was the master paying people who worked 1 hour the same amount that he was paying people who worked for 12 hours? Yeah, so it's understandable, right? So if we're looking this from a material perspective, we too would be kind of, that's not fair. They, this first group took it, but they grumbled, they complained. They're saying, the men who came last have done only 1 hour, and you have treated them the same as us, though we have done a heavy day's work in all the heat. The master was puzzled, right? Because he looks at them and goes back to the agreement. He answered one of them and said, "My friend." So he still sees them as friends. "My friend, I am not being unjust to you. Did we not agree on 1 denarius?" And then if we go back to the beginning of this parable, you will see that that's exactly what the agreement was to pay 1 denarius. "Take your earnings and go. I choose to pay the last comers as much as I pay you. Have I no right to do what I like with my own? Why should you be envious because I am generous?" And this is then finally, it finishes with the very enigmatic but very well-known phrase that says, "Thus the last will be first, and the first last." Okay, quite a bit to unpack here. In some sense, this is a purely discussion of a contractual terms. The master, the landowner, did exactly what he promised, right? He paid the first group 1 denarius, which was exactly the agreement that he made, no more, no less. And they worked the 12 hours, which they had promised they would do. All the others that came later, it was the master's, the landowner's decision to pay them the same, because he felt they deserved, for whatever criteria he was using. And here is then the big question. What is the criteria that he was using? If he was a shrewd landowner, right, and he was taking care of his financial interests, then he's wasting money, right, because he's paying more per hour for all of those other groups, whether it's the one that came in at hour 3, 6, 9, or even at the 11th hour, right? So why is Jesus trying to say here? Why is he telling the stories? And why would the last be the first and the first be the last? Well, we have to, again, extract ourselves from a purely material view of things, right? Let's look at this from a different perspective. So if the landowner is God and he's asking us to do his work, what is his work? Well, our work is to spread his message, is to follow his rules, spread his good news to the world again, right? And everyone is invited at the time that they are ready, right? Because if you think about it, when he first went in this parable at 6 o'clock in the morning, we get the message that everybody who was there was hired. He didn't say he left anybody behind, or he choose some men and not other men. And by the way, when the Bible said men, it means men and women, obviously. So he took everybody who was ready to work with him. When he comes back now, 3 hours later, there are new people there. They weren't there at 6. They showed up later, and they were willing to work. So he brings them in. And this happens again at 6, at 9, and the 11th hour. So what we see here is that the story is all about, it's more about the workers than about the master. It's about the workers being willing to be ready, or be ready to work in the fields of the Lord, right? And as they become ready and they become willing to join for a reward that is just, they will then be accepted by God, and they will work the fields of the God for the missions that we have been given. But what is the reward then? Well, the reward obviously is not money. We don't get paid by God in money for us. And it doesn't matter whether we are working for a little bit or a long time. The rewards are actually the ones, the real reward is the work itself. And this is what is different from physical to spiritual. Because the physical, the work is the thing that we're sacrificing in order to get the reward. In the spiritual sense, the work is the reward more than anything else, regardless of what the final denarius is. The final denarius that we're all working for is to join in the level of perfection that we will strive through our evolution. But the reward that we get is actually practicing the work. So if you think about it, the workers who started first, they've been reaping those rewards, those spiritual rewards, for a longer period. And that's their reward. That's what they get for joining, all towards this ultimate payment, which is our elevation to a higher level of pure spirits. Doesn't matter if we are the early ones or if we are coming late. We're all evolving in our own speed, our own pace, and we will all be welcome into that ultimate reward of being close to God. How long we take, how long we work will differ. But remember that the rewards are essentially what we get along the way. It's not the material rewards. So I promise that I will use yet another passage in the Bible to try to bring this all together. And this is also something very well known. It's Matthew chapter 22, from paragraphs 15 to 21st. And this is all about Caesar and God. Jesus would often have long debates with those who challenged him, who did not believe him or did not understand what he was trying to teach us, right? So among them were the Pharisees. And they were often trying to catch Jesus in some kind of a mind puzzle that he had no good way of going out. So at the time that Jesus was alive and preaching, the Romans were introducing more and more new taxes. This was something that was very unpopular for obvious reasons. But in some ways, there wasn't a lot to do about it, right? Because the Romans dominated, and the king was really submissive to the desires of Rome. So the Pharisees went away to work out between them. They were trying to get something that would trap Jesus in a question, right? And so what they said is they sent their disciples to him together with some Herodians to say, Master, we know that you are an honest man and teach the way of God in all honesty, and that you're not afraid of anyone because human rank means nothing to you. So they're kind of starting the trap by saying compliments. You're a great man, you're honest, you're great at everything, right? But, okay, give us your opinion. Is it permissible to pay taxes to Caesar or not? So here's the trap, right? If he says that's not, they should not pay taxes, he would be going against the power of Rome, and he would be making some very powerful enemies. If he's saying that's okay to pay the taxes, that they should pay the taxes, then obviously the Jewish establishment will feel that this is abusive power. Why is Jesus siding with the Romans when they are taking away so much wealth and value from the hard work of all the Jewish people? So they thought they had him in a trap. Jesus was aware of their malice and replied, "You're hypocrites. Why are you putting me to this test, right? Show me the money you paid the tax with." And they handed him the same denarius, right? The same denarius that the landowner was paying for the workers in the vineyards. And he says, "Whose portrait is this? Whose title?" So he says, "This is Caesar's," right? So this is what's printed in the coin. Then he said to them, "Very well, pay Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and God what belongs to God." So here he was clearly separating the material from the spiritual. And this is the same message that we have heard in the other two parables, where if we try to look at it from Caesar's perspective, neither parables make sense. They seem to be either too material or too kind of conflicting for us to understand why was Jesus telling these. But if these are the taxes we pay God, this is the rewards, these are the work that we do in God's field, then everything changes. The whole view into it is quite different. So I thought this was interesting because this separation of obviously of the heavens or spiritual world and the material world, and our priorities and our duty to both of them, right? So Jesus makes it very clear that we are incarnated for a purpose, and there is a material purpose to our existence, and then we have to pay the material Caesar what it belongs, what is expected of us while we're incarnated. And material things will matter, but shall not forget and shall not lose track of something that's much more important, much more long-term, which is our commitment and our rewards in following God's desires. So I just want to put in as a final, a short passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism. And this is this is chapter 11, loving one's neighbor as oneself. And they talk about this passage that I just read for Matthew 20. So they say in item 6, the question posed to Jesus was motivated by the circumstance in which the Jews dreaded the tax imposed on them by the Romans. And thus they made it a religious issue. They were combining the two things. How does religion face off against the Romans? A large political party had been formed to repeal the tax. The payment of the tax was thus a current matter of outrage for them. Otherwise, the question they put to Jesus, is it permissible for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not, would not have made any sense. So it would have been trivial, right? If you just ask anybody, should you pay your taxes? People say, yeah, you should pay your taxes. Otherwise, there's a punishment for it. So why not, right? The question was really a trap then, because depending on his response, they hoped to incite either the Roman authorities or the Jewish dissidents against him. But Jesus, knowing their malice, eluded the problem and gave them a lesson in justice by telling them to pay to each what is owed, right? So this is the constant theme that threads all of these parables, all of these passages, is that if we are to understand fully the message of the gospel, we must always understand this separation between the spiritual and the material. Well, I think I'm right about time. So, Marcus, I hope this was enjoyable and hopefully some lessons and some good discussions can come out of it.
Thank you, Joe. This was great, actually. The fact that you brought the three parables bringing the same theme around. And I was reflecting here on the previous parable, the parable of the vineyard, right? Or the works of the last hour, some may reference that the divine math or the math of love really doesn't connect with our material arithmetic thinking, right? I think the fact that God or the divine law put us all in the same position, right? Love us all equally, independent of the fact if we listen to the call for the path to righteousness a millennia ago, or just in this incarnation, we are treated the same, we have the same opportunities, we have the same destination. This is very comforting, at least considering, my personal imperfections here. It's truly a blessing for us, and we don't reflect on that very often, right?
Yeah, and when we look at the spiritual context, we have to separate the reward of our goal versus the reward of our effort. They're both rewarding to us. Whereas in here in the material world, all we're looking for is the denarius at the end, right? That's what we think the reward is, not the work. But even here, even as incarnated, if we really are doing charitable good work and something that's really, really fulfilling, you will find reward in the work itself, regardless whether you're being paid or not paid, right? This probably wasn't very common back in Jesus' time in Palestine of doing this type of charitable work. Obviously, there were community work that was done. So he was trying to really stress this separation and trying to understand that don't think of the heavens as as the same as here, because the priorities, the expectations, and what you get out of it is going to be quite different.
Very true. And Joel, here's a question: should we also consider that call, that work, not only the work of charity towards others or spreading the word, as you said, well, but the work that we all have to do internally, our inner transformation, right? Is that also part of that work?
You can't do this the first without the second. You can't do the real work of God if you don't transform yourself first, right? To a certain extent. Because otherwise, you will not be doing it from the pure love of your heart.
That is very true. That's very true. I think sometimes in our short sight thinking, we expect that we can change the world and transform the world and serve others and do great things in life by neglecting ourselves first, right? So it's like peeling an onion. You gotta do the first layer first, actually, before you can go to the outward layers, right?
And what I like about the first parable, the parables of the talents, is that God is also telling us that we will only give to you, I will only give to you what you're able to do at this time, whether it's 1, 2, or 5 talents, right? So if you're capable of doing 5, he will give you the responsibility of 5, and you have to work hard to duplicate that. But if you're not ready, if you're just beginning, if you're in that early stages of your journey, you will be only given 1. So the expectations are not as high, but you'll be equally rewarded with his pleasure, right? And his agreement that you are doing well. And this is for us also not to be always comparing ourselves to Mother Teresa, for example, right? Because she wasn't given 5, she was given 20 talents,
Yes.
right? And we have to understand that we are given what we're capable of doing. This is what we've come to this life. As long as we are fully aware of what we're capable and that we are comfortable that we're doing all we can within our existing limitations, whether it be financial, could be levels of education, how much you have learned. Within sometimes, there are material obligations that take you away. If you have to take care for elderly parents or some special needs children, right? You won't have the same time as other people might do. So don't compare yourself with others. Compare yourself with the number of talents that has been given to you.
Oh, thank you, Joe. This was very important because we do all have the habits of looking at others and feeling bad about ourselves. Oh, look at how much that so and so is doing. Look at what I'm doing, right? That's very important. That's a very important part
We
of
don't
our.
need new ways to feel bad about ourselves. Usually we're very
Yes.
good at that already. But I think that we need encouragement, we need motivation. So that's fine. So these are role models that we should study. We should understand that they have come with different missions than we have. Every one of us has a different purpose of this incarnation. We have many more to come. It's not like we're just next door to that perfection that we all hope to achieve one day. We're still very far away, but that shouldn't demotivate us. It should actually be comforting to us that God is helping us along the way. He is giving us the missions that we can do, and we just have to do our job, just like the workers in the vineyard. Just go in and be prepared to receive a just payment for it.
Very true. Thank you so much, Joe. But listen, that's not all. Now that we are heading to the end, we have one more guest, dear friend of our hearts, and a dear friend of the Conscious Living, about to join us as well. And I'm going to bring her for a final prayer with us. Wait for it. That is
Hi,
Sandra
everybody.
Mussi.
So happy to see you all and be with you. We miss you. Can't wait
We
for
miss
this
you
whole
too.
thing to be over so we can join you in person, or you can join us in person.
Nice. Thank you, Sandra, for being with
Thank
us and
you.
for accepting to do the final prayer for us. I would like to invite everyone to follow Sandra at the closing of our session.
Okay, so let's everybody close our eyes. And in this moment of harmony, peace, and love, that the words of Jesus remind us who we are, and God's benevolence and His love for us will always be here. We just have to open our eyes and our minds to feel this beautiful gratitude that this work is giving us. So we thank you, God. We thank you, Jesus. We thank you, all your workers who are here today with us, who brought us closer to you and who brings us close to you on our everyday lives. So give us beautiful week full of love and peace and harmony, and of course, full of new learnings. And may this lecture brought us together to our own needs and our purpose in this world. Give us love and give us peace. And so be it.
So be it.
Thank you.
Sandra, Jo, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to see you. Receive a big warm hug from the Conscious Living family to warm you guys up on this snow that is
I
behind
know
you.
all that snow outside, and we are feeling all this warm and all this love and care, and it's mutual. Thank you so much, Chiclay. We miss you here in Canada, but we're so happy. You're in the best place.
I know. I miss you all too as well. And for everyone who is with us, thank you so much for joining. We wish you a blessed Sunday and a great week ahead, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.